You've probably heard the phrase, living the dream. But what happens when that dream turns into a nightmare? Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's story was supposed to be the ultimate fairy tale, a life of freedom, independence, and a fresh start in America. But what if I told you that their new life in Montecito is on the verge of falling apart, and the ticking clock is counting down to a massive reckoning? This isn't the story of a prince and his wife. This is the story of a fall from grace, a collapse so spectacular it will have you questioning everything. It wasn't a fan letter taped to the service entrance of the Montecito mansion at dawn. No, this was something far more serious, an unmistakable cold warning. The 30-day clock isn't just ticking for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. It is steadily, relentlessly counting down, each second echoing with the finality of an inevitable end. The countdown isn't a mere formality. It's a ticking time bomb, and there is nowhere to run. This isn't just another tabloid rumor or a jealous whisper from the palace, feeding off the Sussex's once untouchable narrative. No, this is something far more profound. It is a legal ultimatum, a direct hit delivered by the one man who, for all his fame, fortune, and philanthropic deeds, had once opened his arms to them when the world had turned its back. Tyler Perry, the billionaire godfather, the man who offered them sanctuary when they had nowhere else to turn, has now reportedly pulled the plug. Perry, who once saw them as lost souls in need of a safe haven, has now drawn a line in the sand. His generosity has run dry. His patience has worn thin. The world watched as he welcomed them with open arms, providing not just shelter but an impenetrable fortress, all in the name of friendship and empathy. But beneath the surface of that kindness lay an uncomfortable truth. The narrative that Harry and Meghan had carefully constructed for the world, an image of financial independence, of self-made success, of life on their own terms, is now unraveling in real time, like a dream slipping through their fingers. The glittering facade of their new life, which had once appeared so flawless and carefully curated, is collapsing. The $14 million estate they call home, the one they paraded as a symbol of their liberation from the monarchy's grasp, was never the emblem of their newfound freedom. It was, in fact, a gilded cage. A cage built on borrowed money, on promises made to influential friends who, despite their past goodwill, are now demanding repayment. The truth is cruel. This house, this mansion perched on a hill in Montecito, was always more of a trap than a triumph. It was a grand illusion designed to prove to the world that Harry and Meghan had done it. They had escaped, they had conquered, but the truth beneath the glittering exterior is far darker. They built this empire not on solid ground, but on shaky loans, handshake deals, and obligations they could never fully repay. Think about the humiliation of it all. A prince, once a central figure in the world's most powerful royal family, is now reduced to scrambling for cash like a desperate reality star, hoping to prevent a foreclosure notice from becoming a matter of public record. The very same man who had once walked through the grand halls of Buckingham Palace, with servants and riches at his command, now finds himself desperately fighting to hold on to what little he has left. And the movers aren't just coming for their furniture, they're coming for their legacy, their reputation, their very identity. The foundation they built their lives on is crumbling, and if they can't settle this debt soon, they will lose more than a house. They will lose everything. If this debt goes unresolved, it will be the final blow to their credibility in America, the very country they moved to in search of freedom and independence. The gates of their mansion may be locked to the public, but the truth, the financial truth, is now exposed for all to see. The story they've been telling, the carefully crafted image of a self-sufficient, thriving couple, is nothing more than a facade, and behind it lies the wreckage of what was once the Sussex Empire. To understand how this dream turned into a nightmare, we must rewind to the chaotic spring of 2020. It feels like a lifetime ago, doesn't it? Harry and Meghan, exhausted and vulnerable, had just fled Canada. Desperate and exposed, they were like deer in headlights, their every move watched by the vultures of the media. Paparazzi drones hovered overhead, buzzing like angry hornets, capturing their every move. In that moment of vulnerability, Tyler Perry didn't just offer a helping hand. He offered them a sanctuary, a fortress of solitude. Tyler Perry sent his private jet, opened the doors to his Beverly Hills estate, and provided them with a security detail that rivaled the Secret Service. It was a gesture of immense generosity, one born not from obligation but from empathy, a desire to protect them when they were most exposed. Perry, a self-made billionaire who had built an empire from nothing, saw their vulnerability and extended a lifeline. But somewhere along the way, something changed. The lines between friendship and finance began to blur, and what was once a gesture of goodwill began to feel more like an informal business arrangement. When Harry and Meghan finally set their sights on Montecito, they weren't just looking for a house. They weren't just searching for a roof over their heads. They were looking for a statement, a way to announce their arrival on the American stage. They wanted to show the world that they were no longer beholden to the monarchy, that they had found a new sense of freedom. And they found it in the chateau of Riven Rock, a property that seemed to embody everything they desired. On paper, the estate is breathtaking. 9 bedrooms, 16 bathrooms, a tennis court, a tea house, and those famous rose gardens overlooking the Pacific Ocean. It screams success. It's the kind of property that makes a statement. But in the brutal world of high-end real estate, this house had a very different reputation. It was seen by insiders as a white elephant, a property so massive and so expensive to maintain that it would bleed its owners dry. Now, you might be asking, how did they get to this point? How did a couple once so adored, with the world at their feet, end up here? Well, the answer is as heartbreaking as it is revealing. From lavish dreams to desperate measures, let's break down the unraveling of what many once thought was the ultimate success story. Before Harry and Meghan moved in, the keys to Riven Rock belonged to Sergei Grecian, a Russian oligarch with a reputation that sent shivers down the spines of financial experts. The mansion came with a heavy history, one that some even whispered was cursed. Yet, Harry and Meghan, eager to plant their flag in the United States, bought it for $14.65 million. They secured a $9.5 million mortgage, but the math never quite added up for a couple who had just been cut off from the royal purse. This is where the tragedy of Prince Harry becomes painfully evident. He was raised in palaces where the lights were always on, where heating was never a concern, and where bills were paid by an invisible hand. He had no concept of what it truly costs to maintain a sprawling estate like Riven Rock. He traded the constraints of the monarchy for the shackles of a mortgage, not realizing that the bank is a far crueler master than the royal institution. The purchase of Riven Rock wasn't a bold move for independence. It was a patchwork of favors and obligations. A fragile house of cards, held together by the goodwill of friends like Tyler Perry. But goodwill has an expiration date, and that date came much sooner than they expected. As the initial glow of their welcome to America began to fade, the cold, hard reality of property taxes, maintenance costs, and hidden expenses began to sink in. They thought they were buying freedom, but they had signed a deal that required a level of income they simply hadn't secured. The first warning sign wasn't a headline. It wasn't flashing paparazzi lights. It was a shift in the atmosphere around the estate. In Montecito, privacy is a luxury. It's the ultimate currency. But neighbors, as they often do in places like Montecito, noticed everything. And what they began to notice was a subtle yet undeniable downgrading of the operation. For months, the perimeter of Riven Rock had been patrolled by what looked like a paramilitary force, former SAS officers, top-tier protection costing millions each year. It was the kind of security detail that screams head of state-level protection. But recently, locals had begun to whisper about a change. The elite guards had vanished, replaced by local firms that, while still competent, were significantly cheaper. When you start cutting corners on your safety after preaching that you are the most threatened couple in the world, it suggests something darker, that the bank account is bleeding faster than it can be replenished. Then came the social freeze-out. At first, they were the shining new toys of the California coast. Opera lived just down the road. Ellen was a stone's throw away. But in Hollywood, there's a brutal rule. The elite can smell desperation and they detest it. The dinner parties stopped. The high-profile visits dwindled. It wasn't just about popularity, it was about the uncomfortable truth that Harry and Meghan were becoming liabilities. They weren't bringing deals to the table anymore. They were bringing drama, debt, and failure. The house, that unlucky mansion as it had come to be known by the media, began to turn on them. Reports surfaced of disputes over the upkeep of the estate as costs continued to skyrocket. We are talking about a property that requires industrial-level maintenance, hidden costs, including annual property taxes exceeding $200,000, reportedly straining their finances. And let's talk about the water. In drought-prone California, keeping 7 acres of lush English-style gardens green isn't just environmentally controversial, it's financially ruinous. The most glaring sign of the cash crunch was the chaotic launch of American Riviera Orchard. Imagine the optics. A Duchess, who once walked the halls of Buckingham Palace, now sending jars of strawberry jam to Instagram influencers, hoping for a repost. This wasn't a passion project. It was a desperate scramble for liquidity. Critics saw it as a panic-driven pivot, a final attempt to keep the lights on as their other ventures struggled. The jam wasn't about lifestyle, it was about survival. The glamour was peeling away bit by bit, revealing a frantic need for cash flow that the public was never supposed to see. The tension in the air grew thick enough to choke on. It was time we stepped past the manicured hedges and heard the desperate whispers echoing in the hallways. To truly understand how this dream morphed into a nightmare, we must rewind to the chaotic spring of 2020. It feels like a lifetime ago, doesn't it? Harry and Meghan, desperate and exposed, had just fled Canada. The world seemed to close in on them, their every move tracked by the relentless paparazzi. Drones buzzed above like angry hornets, their cameras capturing every vulnerable moment. They were trapped in a moment of extreme uncertainty, unable to escape the media frenzy that engulfed them. In the midst of this vulnerability, Tyler Perry didn't just offer a helping hand. He offered them something far more valuable, a fortress, a place of refuge. He sent his private jet to whisk them away to safety, opened the doors to his luxurious Beverly Hills estate, and provided them with a security detail that rivaled that of the Secret Service. It was an act of immense generosity, driven by a deep empathy for their plight. Perry, having risen from hardship to build his own empire, understood the importance of offering shelter to those in need. But somewhere along the way, the lines between friendship and finance began to blur. The lines that had once been simple and clear, compassion on one side, business on the other, became tangled. When Harry and Meghan set their sights on Montecito, it wasn't just about finding a home. They weren't merely looking for a place to live. They were looking for a statement, a way to announce their arrival to the world as the new American royalty. And they found the perfect stage to make this declaration. The Chateau of Riven Rock. This wasn't just a property, it was a symbol. A statement of triumph, of independence, and of their new life away from the constraints of the British monarchy. The house, perched atop a hill with breathtaking views, seemed to offer everything they dreamed of. But as they made plans to settle into this grand new chapter, they didn't realize that this dream would quickly turn into a harsh reality they weren't prepared for. They thought they were buying freedom, but what they had purchased was a gilded cage, a beautiful illusion that would soon crumble beneath the weight of their financial missteps. This estate, once seen as the embodiment of their new American life, would soon become a haunting reminder of the fragile foundation they had built. And so, from this moment, their pursuit of the American dream would take a very different turn, one that no one could have foreseen. On paper, the property is nothing short of breathtaking. 9 bedrooms, 16 bathrooms, a tennis court, a tea house, and those famous rose gardens that seem to stretch endlessly, overlooking the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean. It screams success, opulence, and the kind of life most can only dream of. It's a picture-perfect symbol of wealth and accomplishment. But in the ruthless world of high-end real estate, the Chateau of Riven Rock had a very different reputation. Insiders whispered behind closed doors that it was a white elephant, an immense property so massive and so expensive to maintain that it would drain its owners dry. Before Harry and Meghan took the keys, The mansion was owned by Sergei Grecian, a Russian oligarch whose name alone caused financial experts to pause. The house carried with it a heavy, almost ominous history, one that some would even call cursed. Yet Harry and Meghan, eager to make their mark in America and prove they could build a life on their own, purchased it for a staggering $14.65 million. They secured a $9.5 million mortgage, but the math never quite added up for a couple who had just been cut off from the royal purse. What they believed was the beginning of a new, free life was in reality a financial labyrinth they would struggle to navigate. This is where the tragedy of Prince Harry begins. Raised in palaces, he had never known the struggles of paying bills, managing utilities, or worrying about where the money to maintain such grandeur would come from. The lights were always on, the heating was always fixed, and the bills were always handled by an invisible hand. Harry, for all his royal upbringing, had no true understanding of the cost of maintaining a sprawling estate like Riven Rock. He traded the rigid constraints of the monarchy for the invisible shackles of a mortgage, unaware that the bank is a far crueler master than the royal institution ever was. The purchase of this estate wasn't a bold move toward freedom. It was a fragile house of cards, pieced together from favors and obligations, held together only by the goodwill of friends like Tyler Perry. But goodwill, as we all know, has an expiration date. And as the glow of their initial arrival in America began to fade, the harsh realities of property taxes, maintenance costs, and unanticipated expenses began to sink in. They thought they were buying freedom, but instead, they had signed a deal that required a level of income and financial security they simply hadn't yet secured. The first warning sign didn't come in the form of a headline or a flashy paparazzi shot. It wasn't the flashing camera lights that usually accompany their every move. No, the first warning sign was far subtler. It was a shift in the atmosphere surrounding the estate. In Montecito, privacy is the ultimate currency. But in a community as close-knit as this one, nothing goes unnoticed. And what neighbors began to notice was a subtle, yet undeniable, downgrading of the operation. For months, the perimeter of Riven Rock had been patrolled by what looked like a paramilitary force, former SAS officers, elite protection teams, a level of security that screamed head of state. It was the kind of protection that costs millions a year to maintain, a fortress designed to shield them from the world. But recently, whispers started to circulate among locals. Something had changed. The high-level security detail seemed to have vanished, replaced by local firms that, while competent, were significantly cheaper. The kind of corner-cutting that suggests something more troubling. When you start reducing security after preaching that you're the most threatened couple in the world, it signals that your bank account is bleeding faster than it can be replenished. Then came the social freeze-out. At first, Harry and Meghan were the shining new toys of the California coast. Media and Hollywood elites couldn't get enough of them. Opera lived just down the road. Ellen was a stone's throw away. They were the epitome of a glamorous, high-profile life. But in Hollywood, there's a brutal rule. The elite can smell desperation and they detest it. The dinner parties that had once been frequent became a distant memory. The high-profile visits, the invitations to exclusive events, all dwindled to nothing. It wasn't just about popularity. This wasn't a high school popularity contest. It was about something far more uncomfortable. Harry and Meghan had gone from being the darlings of the media to becoming liabilities in the eyes of the people they had once been so eager to impress. They weren't bringing in lucrative deals anymore. Instead, they were bringing drama, controversy, and, above all, debt. As their financial troubles deepened, so did their social isolation. The world they had tried so hard to be a part of began to look the other way. In Hollywood, where image is currency and financial stability is king, desperation is a disease. And in the world of the elite, a failure to secure that stability makes you radioactive. No one wants to be associated with it, no matter how charming or likable you might be. The dinner parties stopped. The high-profile visits dwindled. It wasn't just a matter of popularity slipping away. It was about the uncomfortable truth that Harry and Meghan were becoming liabilities in the very circles they had once been eager to enter. They weren't bringing lucrative deals to the table anymore. Instead, they were bringing drama, controversy, and above all, mounting debt. The house, the one they'd hoped would symbolize their new, independent life, began to turn on them. Media outlets, once awestruck by its opulence, had begun to dub it the unlucky mansion. And with good reason. Reports surfaced of mounting disputes over the upkeep of the estate as costs soared to eye-watering levels. We're talking about a property that demands industrial-level maintenance, where every inch of the vast grounds needs constant care. The hidden costs of ownership were becoming impossible to ignore. Annual property taxes alone exceeded $200,000, and those were just the tip of the iceberg. Then there was the water. In a state plagued by drought, maintaining 7 acres of lush, English-style gardens is not just environmentally controversial, it's financially ruinous. The costs were escalating at a pace that couldn't be sustained, and with every drip of water flowing into those verdant lawns, their financial stability was slipping further away. But the most glaring sign of the cash crunch, the chaotic, ill-fated launch of American Riviera Orchard. Picture this. A duchess, someone who had once walked the stately halls of Buckingham Palace, a woman adored and admired around the world, now sending jars of strawberry jam to influencers on Instagram, hoping for a repost. This wasn't a whimsical passion project or a fun side venture. It was a desperate scramble for liquidity, a last-ditch effort to drum up cash. Critics saw it for what it was, a panic-driven pivot in the face of failing ventures. When the Spotify deal collapsed and Netflix's renewal hung in the balance, the jam wasn't about promoting a lifestyle. It was about keeping the lights on. The veneer of glamour was peeling away, piece by piece, revealing the frantic desperation that had always been hidden beneath. The illusion that they were living the dream was slowly crumbling, exposing the hard truth that they were fighting to stay afloat. The tension in the air grew thick, almost suffocating, like a storm gathering overhead. It was time to step beyond the perfectly manicured hedges and peer into the desperation echoing through the once grand halls. The whispers that had been hidden from the public were now impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, the relationship between the Sussexes and Tyler Perry, once built on warmth and generosity, had reportedly chilled to absolute zero. The breaking point didn't come in the form of a sudden explosion or a dramatic confrontation. No, it was a slow, agonizing freeze. It culminated in a phone call, brief and brutal. Harry, realizing the weight of their financial situation, allegedly tried to leverage the personal connection, invoking Perry's role in Lilith's life to seek an extension on the repayment terms. But Tyler Perry, a man who had risen from nothing to build an empire, is no stranger to the realities of business. He understands the fine line between charity and a bad investment. And his response? Silence. A businessman who had run out of patience. The message was unmistakable. The days of informal arrangements, of favors and good intentions were over. The debt had to be settled, or the legal machinery would begin to turn. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about respect. Perry, who had once opened his heart and his wallet, now felt his generosity had been taken for granted, transformed into an expectation, a permanent crutch for a couple who refused to stand on their own 2 feet. The lines between friendship and business had blurred beyond repair, and now there was nothing left but the cold truth. The Sussexes were on their own. Lending money to friends changes everything. It creates a delicate, irreversible shift in dynamics that alters the very foundation of a relationship. When Tyler Perry, the self-made mogul, extended his hand to the Sussexes, it was a gesture born from kindness, a lifeline thrown in their time of need. But as time passed, it became clear that gratitude has a price the Sussexes had failed to pay. Perry had supported them when they needed it most, but as the debts mounted and the promises of repayment grew thin, his patience wore out. And with that, the veneer of friendship faded into the cold reality of business. While the Sussexes grappled with their mounting financial struggles, their foundation, Archewell, was facing its own crisis. Leaked tax filings painted a grim picture of the organization's financial mismanagement. What had once been a beacon of compassion, a philanthropic effort aimed at changing the world, had devolved into a financial quagmire. Expenses ballooned to over $5 million, yet donations dwindled to a mere $2 million. They were hemorrhaging money, spending more than double what they were bringing in. Instead of focusing on the causes they championed, the vast majority of their budget was being funneled into lavish expenditures, private travel, first-class accommodations, and salaries for an ever-changing staff. What was meant to be a beacon of hope had started to resemble something else entirely. A slush fund for a celebrity lifestyle, with little to show for it. Desperation began to set in. With no other options left, Harry reportedly did what he swore he would never do. He called home. But the Bank of Pa was closed. King Charles, though heartbroken as a father, made it clear that his priorities had shifted. The stability of the monarchy, his legacy, was more important than bailing out his son once again. Prince William, now controlling the purse strings, was firm in his stance. No more funding for those who had publicly undermined the very institution they were born to uphold. Harry, stunned, was left holding the phone, his call for help unanswered. For the first time in his life, he realized there was no safety net to catch him. No royal protection officers, no palace accountants to handle the finances, and now no billionaire friends willing to write a blank check. The harsh reality set in. The mortgage deed on the Montecito mansion, like any other, contained standard clauses about foreclosure. But unlike the palace protocols that had once shielded him, banks don't care about titles. They care about solvency. The safety nets were gone. The bridges had been burned. The deadline had arrived and the walls were closing in. We stand on the precipice of a public reckoning, one that cannot be delayed any longer. The Sussexes, who had once sought to redefine themselves, to escape the confines of the royal life and craft their own legacy, now find themselves facing the consequences of their decisions. A castle built on sand, their narrative of independence is crumbling under the weight of their choices. The financial machinery is in motion and there is no stopping it now. They must face what comes next, whatever it may be. And the world is watching. On a crisp December day in 2025, Tyler Perry took to the airwaves and dropped the nuclear option. The voice that had once offered comfort, a voice that had provided refuge and security in their time of need, now delivered a cold, public ultimatum. Meghan and Harry, you owe me a serious chunk of change. If it isn't paid back in 30 days, I'll have no choice but to take this to court. The words hung in the air, heavy with finality, shattering the carefully constructed illusion of the Sussexes' California idol. It was a calculated escalation, born from months of unanswered pleas, simmering frustration, and a widening chasm of unspoken tension. For Harry and Meghan, this moment, this very declaration, was the blow-up they had feared. It was the exact moment their private financial house of cards was kicked over and laid bare for the world to see. As the 30-day clock began its relentless ticking, whispers began circulating among the elite realtors of Santa Barbara about a pocket listing. The mansion, once thought of as their sanctuary, was no longer up for public view. It was being quietly shopped to foreign investors, Middle Eastern syndicates, or Chinese tech moguls, anyone with the liquid cash to close the deal in under 10 days. The strategy was clear: liquidate the asset before the lawsuit hits. They needed to sell, and they needed to sell fast. If Perry followed through with his legal action, the discovery phase would be a nightmare for them, revealing their tax returns, asset inventories, deal breakdowns. Everything would be laid bare for public scrutiny. But here's the cruel twist of fate they hadn't anticipated. The white elephant of Riven Rock wasn't moving. The market had shifted. While Montecito's charm had once drawn the wealthy and famous like a magnet, it had become more treacherous than they had imagined. The mansion, which had once been a symbol of their reinvention and independence, now stood as a cold monument to their overreach, a reminder of their miscalculation. They wanted to prove they could make it on their own, without the help of the monarchy or the support of wealthy benefactors. But in the end, they had only proven that they couldn't survive without a patron. The mansion, once a grand symbol of their new life in America, now served as a gilded cage, a luxury trap, a stark reminder of the dangerous gamble they had made. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, mournful shadows across the manicured lawns of Riven Rock, one haunting image remained. Picture Prince Harry standing on that $14 million balcony, staring out at the vast Pacific Ocean, the view that had once promised freedom. But now it felt like the final cruel joke. Down below, just outside the service gate, a moving truck idled. It wasn't there for a royal tour or a media photo op. No, it was there for something far more painful, the reality check. The moving truck wasn't just coming to pack up their belongings. It was coming to take away the illusion of their new life, the dream they had so desperately tried to build. This wasn't the fairy tale they had imagined. This was the hard, unforgiving truth of their choices. The mansion that was supposed to represent their escape from the past was now the very symbol of their undoing. The dream of independence they had chased so fervently was now crumbling, one piece at a time. And as that moving truck sat waiting, ready to carry away their last remaining illusions, it became clear there would be no happily ever after in Montecito. Only the stark reality of what happens when dreams become debts. There's a profound lesson here for all of us, one that stretches far beyond the headlines, the glossy magazine covers, and the endless media buzz. Whether we live in a palace or a modest studio apartment, we often confuse lifestyle with life itself. We get caught up in the external trappings, the security, the grand mansions, the private jets, and we start to believe that these things define success. Harry and Meghan spent 5 years chasing exactly that, the lifestyle, the illusion of freedom, the image of an effortless life untethered from the royal machine. They believed that acquiring the trappings of success would equate to true success. But in doing so, they forgot the golden rule of independence. It's a rule that is simple but often overlooked. You are only as free as your bank account allows you to be. True freedom, they discovered too late, is not about escaping the monarchy only to become enslaved by a mortgage, debt, and the unpredictable patience of a billionaire's goodwill. The weight of that mortgage, the cost of maintaining an estate, the private security, the lavish lifestyle, became their new chains. They wanted to prove that they could break free from the royal family and stand on their own 2 feet. But instead of finding freedom, they discovered that independence is a fragile construct, often built on far more solid ground than they realized. This, to me, is more tragic than any Shakespearean play. It's the story of Icarus flying too close to the Hollywood sun, fueled by defiance, by debt, and by the belief that they could soar higher than anyone thought possible. They wanted to prove they didn't need the crown, that they didn't need the palace walls to succeed, that they could carve their own path and live life on their own terms. They believed that in shedding their royal titles, they could escape the burdens of tradition and build something new, something free. But as history often teaches us, when you fly too high without considering the weight of what you leave behind, you risk crashing down. In the end, they proved exactly why they needed the crown. The crown, for all its restrictions, its rules, and its obligations, had provided a safety net. It kept them sheltered from the harsh realities of the world they thought they could control. The real world, however, doesn't offer such protections. It doesn't care about your title, your fame, or your status. It only cares about solvency, about accountability. And in that world, when the debts begin to pile up, all you're left with is an eviction notice. The 30-day clock is ticking. The locks are about to be changed. Every moment that passes brings them closer to the inevitable truth they've been trying to avoid. The real question now is not how they can fix it, but whether they can even survive it. When the money runs out, and the gilded cage they once called home is repossessed, will their marriage survive the fall, or will love, the very thing they've fought so hard to protect, become the final casualty of their financial ruin? This isn't just a cautionary tale for Harry and Meghan. It's a reminder for all of us. No matter how much we chase after the next big thing, no matter how desperately we try to build the perfect life, we must always remember that true freedom is built on solid ground. You can chase fame, wealth, and the lifestyle that comes with it, but if you don't have a strong foundation beneath you, it will all crumble. If you believe that financial accountability comes for us all, yes, even princes, hit that like button. It helps us share these hard truths. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because when that moving truck finally pulls away from Montecito, you'll want to be here to see where it goes. The eviction notice has been printed. The end of their grand experiment is here. Stay tuned, because this story is far from over. There's a profound lesson here for all of us. Whether we live in a palace or a studio apartment, we often confuse lifestyle with life itself. Harry and Meghan spent 5 years chasing a lifestyle. The security, the mansions, the private jets, believing these things define success. But they forgot the golden rule of independence: you are only as free as your bank account allows you to be. True freedom isn't about escaping a monarchy only to enslave yourself to a mortgage and a billionaire's patience. If you believe that financial accountability comes for us all, yes, even princes, hit that like button. It helps us share these hard truths. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because when that moving truck finally pulls away from Montecito, you'll want to be here to see where it goes. The eviction notice has been printed. The end of their grand experiment is here. Stay tuned, because this story is far from over.